So let's get started.
Sure.
So, Nathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I have notes up so I don't stumble too much, but this is probably going to be rambly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a spontaneous thing.
Yeah. So my name's Nathan. I work at WB Games Avalanche on Hogwarts Legacy as a game designer.
That's enough. That's enough. The thing you have said, that's enough for like Hogwarts Legacy. It's like one of the biggest games that is like everyone is talking about. Like me and my friends, everyone is talking about Hogwarts Legacy. And when my friends heard that I'm going to interview someone who's working on that, I don't know, they were pretty jealous and they were very excited.
Oh, well, yeah, it's been pretty surreal. I mean, it's been, pretty quiet for a while. And then when we finally got to announce, it was like a dream come true. I mean, this has been a real project of passion and love for hundreds of people. So, I mean, we were nervous, like we're watching the announcement and I'm watching the live stream for PlayStation and I'm reading all the comments and I'm like, oh my God, what if they don't like it, man? What if people...
They have to like it. It's the only thing we Harry Potter fans and every Muggle fans is wanting for at least last 10 years. That there's no Harry Potter game at all.
No, I'm with you, man. I mean, that's, when I got this job, it started as an internship and then I moved into a contract hire, and the interview was like, they didn't tell me what I would be working on. They're like, okay, it's going to be an IP. It's a Warner Bros. IP. You'll know it. We're interested in your writing background. I'm like, okay, all right. Yeah. Writing. Okay. But until I got it, I didn't know what I was working on. And then when I come into the studio the first day and they're like, okay, you need to do your research, go research Harry Potter. And I'm like, what? Like, finally we're getting the game that I've been asking for 10 years. So it's been pretty crazy.
It's like, it's probably like 2017 or something when I was in second year of my undergrad. I just heard the rumor that some Harry Potter game is in the production. And I saw some teaser about it and in some blogs, but that wasn't definite. But I was sure that something is out there. So, and in 2020, I'm like talking to you, the game designer of Hogwarts Legacy.
It's happening.
It's happening, man. So, Nathan, you have said that you are a game designer at Warner Bros Avalance. So, could you tell me about your role of what you do at Warner Brothers and what's your role about?
Yeah, it kind of depends day to day. I wear different hats. I've always felt like, even just starting out, I've always felt like game designer your job was to solve problems. Like you're not really there to have ideas. You're there to isolate down issues and then come up with affordable solutions. And that's what I feel like I do. Every day I come in, I look at Jira, I look at my bugs, I solve my bugs before anything. And then I play the game or I implement some new feature or mission or whatever. But at the core of it, I really feel that game design is just about solving problems, and there's different facets to it. Like communication is important, but at its core, I think it's just every day I come in and I try to fix something. Now, whether or not I succeed, that's a different.
This is exactly the thing is that get me started, because I had ideas on my head before I started working on games, but I didn't really know how to execute it. And when I started executing it, and it was the game development, and that eventually became my passion. And I'm going to University of Utah next fall. So
Yes,
thanks. It's been a dream come true. And as you have said that you have a writing background, and I know you have a creative arts and a film studies background. So I was meaning to ask you that does that like film study and creative arts background helps you become a good uh, designer?
Yeah, I think so. I guess yes is the first kind of quick answer to that. But I feel like kind of the most fun about being a designer is you get to take inspiration from anything. Um, I think there's a lot of power in the design of life, and what I guess what I mean by that is like you're walking around and you see a door, right? And when you go to open it, you'll naturally kind of intuit whether you push it or you pull it based upon if it's a horizontal bar, you push it. If it's a vertical bar, you pull it, right? And that's a
Yeah,
natural. It's called an affordance, right? We have assumptions about the world, and so I felt like my creative writing background and my film background gave me all of these insights into different parts of like affordances, like what we assume, what we like, what we don't like, how to structure progression and how to structure narrative flow. Um, but what's super fun about design is that no matter what your background is, you can take pieces of that. Like I look at Beat Saber, which is a wonderful game. I love that game, and they took their background on music or on like kinesthetics or maybe just sword fighting. I don't know, and they turned that into something that is fresh and exciting. And I don't know if I'm kind of rambling again.
no, it's actually it's exactly the thing I was looking forward to, because honestly, I am a game engineer, so I have to work with lots of codes, and but a lot of time I have another side who is really interested in filmmaking, like animated filmmaking specifically, and I have made a couple of animated shorts which are
It's
not
awesome,
at good at all. Honestly, I
dude.
will
That
show
doesn't matter.
I will show you in a minute, but it wasn't good at all. But still, I'm really interested in the storytelling, and as a as a person who grew up with reading a lot of books, it's something else. And whenever I found your profile and I saw absolutely about everything about your background, and I saw your movie Extra Credit and Skinny Love, it was amazing. Especially Extra Credit was really, it kind of the things that touches me because it's real, it happens, this kind of stuff happens. So so you have told that you have a narrative design, you have main interest in narrative design. So could you please explain what narrative design is?
Oh man, if I could do that, I would be making a lot more money, I think. Narrative design is really young. I mean, games games are young. It's in terms of the tech, like it's only been going on for a very small amount of time, and then games that are used as storytelling mediums are even younger. And so it's what narrative design is going to depend on your scope, your goals, uh, your intended experience. Your pillars. Like, what are the things that are important to your game? That's gonna change what narrative design is. I think. Excuse me. I think at its core, narrative design is just about creating experiences. Now, I think where it starts getting contentious is what exactly that means. For some teams, like me personally in Hogwarts Legacy, I'm mainly in a content creation role. It's mainly what I do. But sometimes when I'm lucky, I get to also be in a systems role. And I feel like that's where the real power of narrative design comes forward. I don't know if you're a big board game player, but in my opinion, the best narratively designed game I've ever played is Pandemic Legacy, because everything was systemic. I mean, it's a board game, it's, if you've played Pandemic, it's like Pandemic, but there's legacy portions, which means it takes place over the course of 12 to 24 play sessions, and the board adapts to your choices. Things happen. There are story moments that are reflected by choices that you've made, and everything that happens is because of something you've done. And there's power in that. There's power in that systemic storytelling. And now that, I don't mean to say that other kinds of narrative design aren't as good. Like, I think that, God of War, the new one, is outstanding. And certainly they spent a lot of time designing those narrative beats. But that's a very curated event. I didn't have any choice, right? They used mechanics in ways that helped enhance their story, but they didn't really tell a story through my choices. So, I mean, it just depends. So you can do something really linear and curated and focus on, how do I capitalize on this one experience? How do I capitalize on these things that I think are important? Or you can do something more systemic, which, I mean, Mass Effect does that, or like, I guess that's still BioWare. I was going to bring up KOTOR, but that's still BioWare. But those are more systemic choices, right? So I think it just depends on the kind of game you're making and the goals that you have and your production budget, really.
So,
I don't know. I feel like it's a long way of saying it depends.
Yeah, it's really great, because in a couple of weeks I'm gonna start my own RPG game, which is kind of loosely based on Diablo 3. I guess you have played Diablo 3. I guess everyone has played.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Diablo 3. So I can figure out the whole combat mechanics and all the stuff that's going on. That's the basic gameplay. But I want it to be a narrative focus. So I really wanted to know, how can I do that? So what would be your best advice for me?
I mean, as someone who values story very deeply, my answer is probably don't focus on story. Make sure the gameplay is good. If you can make the game fun, make the mechanics polished and feel good, the story will come naturally. You will, I think, this is coming from experience. I have a whole Google Doc full of like, oh, what if I did this, right? Full of stories of things I wanted to tell. And if you have a story you want to tell, you should probably pick a book, or make a movie, something that's inherently linear. Otherwise, you're going to run the risk of the game and the story clashing, like getting in the way of each other. I think you've probably experienced this. There's times when you play a game and the story beat says, well, you have to do this. And you're like, but what? And I want to do that, right? Like, I think of like Borderlands 2, spoilers, I guess, for like a 10-year-old game. But in Borderlands 2, when Roland gets shot, 10 seconds ago, I saw him as a bullet sponge. He got shot thousands of times. I got shot thousands of times. And then he gets shot one time in a cutscene and he's dead. And that's because the story came in and said, okay, well, this thing happens to happen right now. And it got in the way of the game. And that can be fine. But I tend to find, my own personal experience, you start with the mechanics. You start with, well, what's the experience I'm going for? You say you want it to be like a Diablo game. Do you want it to be gritty? Do you want it to be bright and colorful? Do you want it to be scary? Isolate down what that is, get that working in the mechanics, and then come back and go, okay, well, what story does this mechanics kind of already telling? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of making sense right now, because lots of time I was thinking about first writing down the story, at least a plot first, and then go forward with mechanics. But it's kind of now reverse after you have said. So that's absolutely I'm gonna do. So like you have said that you do, well, like we need to do the game mechanics first to make a compelling story. So if you could like a little bit elaborate on that, because I really want my audience to understand how we can use gameplay mechanics to make a compelling story.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like the best way of explaining this is just to highlight some games that have done it really, really well. Um, I would say, like, if if you haven't played Obra Dinn, go check that game out. It's amazing. It's super simple. It's just a detective game, but its complexity shines in how the mechanics weave into the story. I'm trying not to spoil anything. It's masterfully crafted, honestly. And then I would also say Outer Wilds is another example of a game that tells a story through its mechanics. That game is insane. That's like one of the games that I look at and I'm like, damn, that's genius. It's really, really impressive. But I do want to say that there can be times where starting with a story doesn't hurt you. It just, if you're starting with like, okay, I want to make this Diablos type game, and you say I want to make this other story, you're going to have to sacrifice one of them, right? Like you're either going to have to say, well, my story is more important, and so my mechanics have to suffer, or my mechanics are more important, and the story has to suffer. And the story just inherently is more flexible, right? Like it's
Absolutely.
easier to make something compelling through story than it is to make a bad mechanic fun. And so if you have a plot that you like, you feel free to jot it down and work with it. But just keep in mind, like if something needs to budge and you have mechanics that feel good, getting mechanics it's so much harder. And you said you have an engineering background, so you know all about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was just thinking about that, and I'm just reiterating my idea on my head. And I was thinking that okay, so the main mechanics of Diablo is kind of like point and click and action adventure dungeon type game. So I was thinking about making it on a kind of like a natural level, like kind of a village kind of level where the protagonists uh, have to do some task, and there will be have lots of AIs of like kind of like royal guards on something, and there will be castle, and there will be the final boss. So this kind of thing I was thinking about. So maybe I could pull this off as a story. I still don't know yet because I am very novice on this. Uh, but I will absolutely show you when I have started on prototyping that, and
Please
obviously,
do.
yeah, absolutely. So, Nathan, you have said that you have done experiences on lots of game on narrative design, and you have said that we can use gameplay mechanics for a craft a compelling story. So, my next question is that does this include any challenges? Like, do you face any challenges doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really easy to fall into the trap of what we're comfortable with. So I come from a film background, I come from a creative writing background, and I naturally fall into those terms, right? I when I'm pitching missions, when I'm pitching new features, I fall into uh, kind of those boxes, right? I talk about Freytag's triangle. I use the word climax, right? Like but inherently those terms are used to describe linear storytelling, and games aren't. I mean, being vague, I guess, very often we run into points where when I design a mission, I'll plot it out. I'll say like, all right, has this many beats? These are the experiences I want to have at each beat. And then I'll graph it. And so I'll say like, okay, well, I want it to start down here, kind of low intensity. And then maybe there's a fight, and that kind of brings it up to this intensity. And then afterwards, it turns out that you have to look for something, and that brings it back down here. You're kind of graphing these moments. And sometimes that works great, and you can kind of see the emotional arc of a mission. But sometimes you go into playtesting and you ask someone, okay, how does that feel right now? You're in that fight. How does that feel? And they're like, well, it's a really easy fight, and so I don't really care. So I'm rating it down here, and you're like, well, oh shit, like that's a problem, right? Like that's something now I have to go into those mechanics, and I need to talk to the encounter designers, because I don't do that. I say like I want one here, but I don't design the encounters. So I'll go into them and I'll say, oh, they're saying this is really easy. How can we tune this? And so at the end of the day, I can say what I want, but we only have so many knobs and levers that we can pull and adjust. I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. This answers my questions exactly. Because honestly, I really love to talk about making stories. And one of my favorite game is Naughty Dog's Last of Us and Uncharted 4, which was very story driven. And I really like to make all those because those are those are one of the best games in the world right now. And that's because those the story actually connects with the game mechanics. Each and every punch, each and every move actually has a meaning, and it has a connection with the story. So I really wanted to talk with someone who has a background of storytelling and something. And I'm really glad that we are having this conversation, because I really want to make a game that has a compelling story, that has something to say. So, as I was saying, I am really interested in filmmaking, and I have made one like animated short, like 6 seconds animated short, but it took me a while to do that. So,
They're hard. Yeah.
yeah,
There's a reason I didn't do
absolutely.
animation.
So, you like animation?
Oh, I loved anime. That was how I got my start in games. Was I went to I like took a class, and then in like 3D modeling, and then I kind of got swept up into my university's game making club. And so I planned on I was like, oh, I want to add animations to my movies. In fact, that's actually, if you my like last movie that I made, Bump in the Night, I have like a weird kind of effect on one of the characters, and that was supposed to be 3D animated.
Wow.
But it was not, because it's really hard and time constraints.
Yeah,
But
actually,
yeah,
it's really time constraint. And most importantly, having the right resources. And I couldn't move forward with it because I have Blender, I have some knowledge on it, and I have some knowledge on animation, but I'm not really good at that. And most importantly, I'm not good. Like, I don't really fond of the process, because it's doing the same thing again and again and again. So I kind of like coding and engineering stuff and making games and making the stories, and not really that thing. So here's the, as I was saying, that here's the,
I mean, I
just
think that's
wait
the
a minute.
beauty of game making, is I've always loved that. Like, filmmaking can be kind of alone, can be kind of solitary, but game making, you always have a team, and that's my favorite part.
Yeah, that's the exact reason I'm going forward with it, because it's kind of have a team vibe, and we are all doing something together, and that's really great. Yeah,
Yeah,
so this is the 6 second short I have made.
I'm very excited. Oh, nice.
It's kind of like the Harry Potter spell casting that was actually in my head, because I'm a really big Harry Potter fan.
Dude, that's solid. No, that animation's smooth. Like, I assume that's the I assume that's a an Unreal base character, or
Yeah, actually, I took the character from Unreal, and I like made the animations on Blender, and I put it on the iClone, so all the kind of stuff, and I did it
hell yeah.
like 5 or 6 hours to do only the 6 seconds. So it was my first animated short.
Yep, that's how, there's so much artistry. When I was when I was working on a Hard Light Vector, that entire game we had one animator, and he is a wizard and a trooper. But I mean, oh my god, like, you look at that game and you're like, okay, it's first person, so we can kind of limit the number of animations we need, and it's a robot, so we can kind of get away with fewer animations. And that was what I thought going into it. And when we like I was in more of a producer role, and we sat down and we went through like all the things we would need. Oh my God, it stacks up so fast. And I mean, yeah, without him, that game wouldn't be a third of what it is.
Yeah, actually, I was discussing this with Michael, and he was telling me about his uh, enemy team. And I know you are on the
Yes.
player side, and I read your like blog on your website, and you said that you are kind of like you have to do a lot of stuff like uh, player movement, combat mechanics, UI, animation, like production, and lots of stuff. So I was really wanted to ask you like what's that experience like, if you could tell us that experience. Like I really wanted to people to know that how an award winning game is made, and Hard Light Vector was an award winning game.
I feel like award-winning games aren't made. Like I used to have this misconception that a designer would come in and they'd go, okay, guys, I have this idea. It's going to be amazing. And then you just make it and you just go and it becomes Stardew Valley, or it becomes Undertale, or it becomes Oberdin. Like you have this great plan and you just make it. And that's not really how it works. I mean, Hard Light Vector was a labor of love, and we only had like 6 months to work on it. So comparing it to the masterpieces that I just listed might be a little arrogant. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the same concept, and that's iteration. You play your game as often as you can. You get other people to come in, you get them to play it, and they tell you why your game sucks, or they tell you why your game rocks, and you focus in on that thing. I mean, when we started, Hard Light Vector was it was supposed to be a Shadow of Colossus
Yeah,
meets Spider-Man game. I don't know if Mike told you that, but
yeah, he was saying that your animator made kind of a like spider going kind of animation, and you are trying to go in with that, and you are also
yes.
prototyping with some other VR stuff, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, we had like all these ideas and these things that we liked, and kind of we had this idea of where it was going to go. We wanted big monsters, and you're gonna be super fast and smart, and you're gonna go all around them, and you're gonna beat them up or whatever. And as we played, like swinging wasn't feeling right, and and so we're like, okay, well, we can't do swinging. What do we pivot to? And that's how we got that spear mechanic. And then we kept playing, and we're like, well, this thing isn't working right. So like, well, what do we do with that? And we pivoted away from that. I mean, we pivoted, and eventually we got feedback that our world felt, I forget the exact word, but small. It felt kind of inconsequential. And that was a hard day. That playtest was like, oh my God, like the art's so good. Why isn't it coming out? And so we shifted to first person, and we're like, okay, this is it. We figured out how to get that feeling we want. And so it's all these small micro shifts, all these small changes. And every time you make a change, you're just terrified. You're like, oh my, I'm going to break the game. We're going to go to first person and everything's going to be ruined. We're going to cut swinging and everything's going to be ruined. But you kind of just have to trust your team. And I mean, that's a big part, is Mike's a brilliant designer. And so anytime we were like, okay, well, this boss isn't working, as the first iteration of the boss we had sucked. Honestly, like it was just bad. It didn't work. And we went to Mike and we're like, Mike, what are we going to do? And he's like, guys, like, we're going to try this. And then that sucked. And then he's like, no, okay, we're going to try this. And then that one worked. So, I mean, I don't think good games are made. They're it's like a bunch of bad games are made. And then eventually you find something and you're like, oh, wait, that's actually good. And then you chase that and you hope it takes you to someplace successful.
Yeah, actually, it's amazing to listen every side of the story. Like Mike told me his side, and you are telling me your side. And if I have any chance, I will love to hear the stories of like other parts on this game. But when I played Hard Light Vector, and I saw the trailer, I was like, whoa, this game is so big. And when I heard this, you guys are going to go for a third person, and then one of your professor, I guess Ryan Bound or someone told me make it a first person. You guys thought about just make it a toggle first person, third person kind of camera movement. And then I realized, okay, so actually we are reiterating on some idea and kind of like trial and error stuff out. So that's really great.
Yeah, there's this philosophy of it's coined to some very talented designer, and I can't remember who said it, but follow the fun, right? So you make something, and it doesn't have to be good, but if it's not good, iterate, and as soon as you find something good, then follow it. You know, don't be beholden.
Actually, isn't that the whole idea of the life? Like, it's obviously we're talking about games, but isn't that we do every day in our life? Like, if we don't find something good, we reiterate, and when we find something, we go forward with it.
I hope so. Yeah, maybe not as often as I should, but at least in theory, that's you find what you like and you chase that.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you a little about my story. When I was in third year or second year of my undergrad, I didn't know what I'm going to do at all.
That sounds familiar.
I was like, okay, I'm doing computer science engineering, and after that I might go get a job on a big company, and I have to do really good on my marks and all the stuff. And I really didn't have any passion. I just love reading books, seeing movies, and like kind of this stuff. Every person would do at that time. And then I had a breakup, and in our life, each and everything kind of going back forward with it. And then I made my own company, got investment, and then when I started on my game development, I find something peaceful about it, and then I move forward with it. And I have, like, from then 2018 to now, I have done so many things I never even thought I would. So exactly the stuff you have said, like, I got the fun in my life, and I'm just chasing with it. And even I'm doing this podcast, I never thought about making a YouTube channel or do a podcast. I was watching Lex Friedman's podcast on YouTube, and then I struck, hey, there isn't anything like for the game developers, so let's try make one. And right now we are in the 7th episode, so it's amazing.
Follow the fun, dude. Hell yeah. So if you're gonna give this as a title, follow the fun. There you go.
Yeah, this is going to be my autobiography. So coming back to our questions, I know that you have. We are talking about lots of our stories. I really want to know that, like where did it start? Where did it start? Like, why are you so much passionate about stories and narratives? Like, what's your the history on that?
I think there's kind of two sides to it. From kind of the universal side, I think everyone is obsessed with stories. I mean, you ask someone, "Hey, how was your day?" And they'll tell you a story. They'll tell you the beginning. Well, first I did this and this and this, and then they'll rising tensions. Oh, but traffic was right. So we kind of have these understandings of how stories should be how to tell them. And I think there's something very human about that, something that kind of connects us and how we understand the world. I think you can tell a lot about a person and about a culture based upon the stories they tell. On the flip side, I started when I was very young, in like elementary school. It was storytelling was something I did with my mom, and we made a game out of it, you know. And then as I got older, it became a form of escape. I mean, it was just, you know, I would go home and I'd do my work. I'd come home from practice, and then I'd write as long as I could stay awake. It's kind of how I process things. It's kind of how I was able to, you know, say on the page what I couldn't say in person, you know. And I kind of became obsessed. Like that's where I got friends. Is I'd be in anytime, any class, let me do a movie. That's what I would do. You know, anytime you get those assignments that were like, oh, just have fun with it, just as long as it's educational. I was like, okay, it's a movie. And I'd grab anyone that was interested, and we'd go off and we'd make some crappy like Spanish movie about food words, or we'd go make some crappy movie about the Odyssey. But it was amazing. I mean, it was yeah, it was a way to make friends, is a way to do dumb shit and get good grades for it for some reason. I don't know. And then from there, it was just, you know, that's what I knew and that's what I liked. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go to college for it, you know, chase the fun, right? And from there, I was really lucky to go to a school with a good English program. That wasn't really on purpose, but I lucked out. And as I learned more about storytelling, I'm a very systems brained person. Like I like to see how things fit together. I like to see the patterns and how we do things. And it turns out that storytelling is absolutely a pattern. It's absolutely, like, I mean, if you look up the 3-act structure, or you look up the, oh man, I can't remember his name now. Holy crap. The Rick and Morty creator, he has a theory on storytelling that's like a circle. Dan Harmon has a circle. And that's another form. And then,
Yeah,
you know, of course, free text triangle.
I was reading this on your website. You wrote it.
I did what? I'm sorry. I think I missed part where you said.
You wrote it about this circle on your website on the Hardlight Vector documentation.
Oh my gosh, did I really? That sounds like something
Yeah,
I do.
actually, that might be the reason it kind of resembles so much, because I just read it this morning, and I was saying, damn, storytelling has a method. I didn't know that, and I honestly didn't know. But I really like something methodical, and I really wanted to know how this stuff works. So, thank you so much for letting me know that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's tons of, this isn't anything new. I mean, if you want your mind blown, just go look up the hero's journey.
Hero's journey, like, what's that?
So the hero's journey is, I mean, at one point I knew who coined that phrase, but I don't anymore. I have since graduated school and don't remember names. But the hero's journey is basically a series of steps that lead the protagonist through a story. And it, when you look at it, you know, fair warning, it's going to ruin 90% of stories for you, because most stories are just the hero's journey. Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, they all have this call to adventure, decline the call, and then the mentor, and then into the unknown, B story, back up to, return. Oh man, I forget the terms now, but like return, but changed. And then, so it's this circle that talks about basically how to structure an adventure, a classic adventure.
I gotta read that. Before I start making that game, I gotta read that.
And it's very human. I mean, you're going to read it and you're just going to go like, oh, wow, I've read the same story a lot of times. And I think there's also something to recognize about just because something has the same structure doesn't mean it's the same story. Like the characters of Star Wars are different than the characters of Lord of the Rings, are different than the characters of XYZ. But I
Motivations
mean,
are
there's,
different. The history is different. I can take the same kind of system and I reiterate on those variables to make something absolutely new.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that exact same concept is applied to games as well. I mean, I think sometimes the gaming community can be kind of harsh about this, but it's good to remember that good games don't have to be innovative, right? You don't
Yeah,
have to make Minecraft.
that's really true. That's really true because lots of good games are kind of alike in a particular sense. Might be the mechanics is different, might be the story is different, but whole system is kind of resembles.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of my all-time favorite games is Hollow Knight. And Hollow Knight, they're doing amazing. They're doing it better than arguably anyone, but they're not doing anything new. It's a Metroidvania. It's a hack and slash. Well, it's not a hack and slash. That's not fair. But you get what I'm saying. Like nothing about it is like, wow,
absolutely.
that mechanic is mind-blowing. It's just very well done.
I haven't seen in a long time. I haven't seen a game where I can say that, oh my god, I hadn't seen this mechanics before. Like most of the time we see the kind of like either medieval kind of stuff or modern kind of guns and stuff, or something kind of melee weapons kind of stuff. But it's really the motivation behind it, the story behind why I'm using that, who I'm using against, all those kind of stuff makes it interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think even just another example, the Battle Royale, I know it's kind of maybe not as popular as it used to be, but it's still one of the newer genres to come out in the last few years. And Fortnite is top dog over PUBG, not because they're new, right? PUBG did it first, but Fortnite did it better, right? They had, I mean, you could argue the crafting is new and maybe that's enough to bring in a target audience, but really I think it's just about polish and reliability, consistent progression systems.
And the like essence of building something while I'm like killing my enemies, like building a stuff and figuring out a way to what to break and what not to. And that the stuff, it's really making Fortnite is one of the most, if not the most, one of the most profitable and successful game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in like 5 years or 10 years.
Absolutely. And you know, now that I'm thinking about it, bringing it back to our previous conversation, Fortnite didn't, you know, it started out as like a tower defense kind of thing. And then
I didn't know.
I think you can still play that mode. I think it's called Save the World.
Oh, I was recently playing that Avengers, that new mode. They pulled out a Marvel Avengers kind of mashup something.
Yeah. But I feel like Epic just does such a great job of following the fun, right? I mean, they have this game mode, and I don't know if it was doing well or not. I didn't really follow it, but certainly the Battle Royale is doing very well. So they saw this, they iterated, and they went for it. And I think that's really paid off for them.
You know what? When I first played Fortnite, I didn't really like it, honestly, because there's a lots of stuffs going on, and I was really bad at it. That might be the reason I
I'm so bad
like stopped.
I'm so bad.
I basically stopped. I actually basically stopped at like, okay, I'm not playing this anymore. This kind of stuff. But then again, after I played PUBG and I thought, okay, let's play this again. And then I understood, okay, now I'm getting it.
I I've played it a few times. I've always had fun, but I am so bad at Twitch shooters. I man, the more you get into game making, the harsh truth is the less you play games. And I haven't stopped playing games by any means. I still like, I make sure I carve out time to play games. If you're a game designer, play games. But I can't devote 100 hours into a game anymore. Like CD Projekt Red is coming out with Cyberpunk, and they're like, it's going to be bigger than Witcher 3. And I'm like, oh my God, bigger? I can't deal with it.
Bigger than Witcher 3. Witcher 3 took me like 6 months to complete the half of it.
I still haven't beaten Witcher 3 because it's so big. I'm like, I got to go play the new thing.
Thank God you haven't started on Skyrim 3.
I mean, luckily Skyrim came out when I was still in high school, so I had time back then. I've devoted it.
Yeah, when I was in high school and Elder Scrolls, Skyrim 3, Elder Scrolls came in, I jumped in and I did like 30, 40 hours of stuff, like on real world, 30, 40 hours, not on their world. And I stopped. I probably haven't finished a lots of games. Like I was started on Horizon Zero Dawn. I haven't finished. I only finished Uncharted 4. That was because obviously that was a game that hugely story based, and I couldn't stop until I know the end. So that's one of the reason I love talking story with you, because story is the thing
Absolutely.
that actually binds the player to the game. Because honestly, if you are doing something with the player, you need to know what's going to next. And what Uncharted 4 did right is that there is a suspense till the end. And the rape is great. Nathan was great. Sully was great. That was an amazing game.
Absolutely. I mean, there's kind of two thoughts that jump in my head. The first one being, in AAA games, we're seeing a trend of open world games, right? Of open world design. We see it in Red Dead, we see it in GTA, we see it in Horizon, in Skyrim, and everywhere. We see it everywhere. And largely, it leads to fatigue, exactly what you're talking about. In open world games, you get away with some sloppy design that you wouldn't get away with in a more traditional, or maybe not traditional, but like a more Naughty Dog linear story, right? Because it doesn't matter if nothing's in that corner of the world, because maybe the player doesn't go there. It's fine. But in Naughty Dog games, the player's seeing everything because we're going to specifically curate. So it's interesting to me that you're saying, oh yeah, I have trouble finishing open world games. And I think largely, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's because story is the ultimate progression system. And in open world games, you lose that. I mean, I love Horizon Zero Dawn. I think it has some of the most fun combat I've ever played. It feels amazing. But their story doesn't know what it wants to be. It's an open world game with a linear story. Why? Just make it a linear game. I mean, they go so far as to like trek you all over the world. And it's like, well, what am I gaining by doing this? Right. And if I had the same problem you did. To me, it was, I hit a certain point and I felt fatigued. It's like, well, I don't really feel motivated to explore anymore.
It's kind of like I'm going out digitally inside the game and I'm just roaming around and I don't know what to do. I don't have any other goals. And whenever I'm playing games, I would like to do something that's meaningful rather than just roaming around and having the quest. That's the reason I never really, honestly, I never really liked GTA 5 or 6, because honestly, that's too much quest and all the stuff, and I didn't knew the meaning. Even the GTA 5 or 6, that's very new. I even finished GTA Vice City because that's the quest thing. So that's the main key point of today's conversation is story is the ultimate progression system. That's the thing you have said there.
Yeah. I mean, I think story comes in three kind of broad terms in games. you get the wrapper, which is it's I see fire in a game, it's gonna burn me, right? I never have to tell you, but it's wrapped in story. If I suddenly made that fire, I don't know,
like
a
bigger, like
vine.
explosion type something.
Yeah, I was just saying like all I know is like I have a mechanic and it's this thing does damage. So there are wrappers I can give to this thing that does damage to explain mechanics without ever explaining them. I don't need a tutorial on fire burns things because the player already knows that fire burns things, right?
True,
So that's
absolutely.
kind of like one broad category. The second one is exactly what we're talking about, narrative as a progression. I mean, how much grinding have you sat through in a Final Fantasy game because I needed to know what the ending was, right? Like Persona 5
True.
is just making your numbers go up until they're big enough for you to see the final cinematic.
Yeah, that's the very reason I am really excited about Hogwarts Legacy, because it kind of, there's all two reasons. Number one, it's Hogwarts, it's Harry Potter world, and each and everyone kind of explore it. And number two, everyone wants to have their story, their part of Harry Potter. They want to be the stuff Harry Potter did. So the very thing I was meaning to ask is that you seem like a very story focused person. So have you ever worked on something that's not really story focused and totally on based on kind of arcade style?
I think it kind of depends. When I worked on HLV, we kind of got into discussions on how important story should be to our design, and I'm biased, but I personally feel like whether you want it to or not, story is always present in anything you do. It kind of goes back to what we're talking about, where humans are programmed to create meaning from patterns, right?
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
Dark Souls. It's like, does Dark Souls have a story? If you ask me, not really. But if you ask the people that pay attention and read all of the descriptions and dig deep into the hidden clues, they'd say yes, it has an amazing story. Now, did the developers mean for it to have a story? I don't know. That's a different question. But so I would definitely say in Hard Life Vector, we only had 6 months. That's not enough time to give it plot, right? There's kind of this
Yeah.
difference between narrative, which is kind of ephemeral, kind of this like implied structure of beats and pacing. And then there's story, which is more of the architecture of the world, what happened here, right? And then there's plot, which is this happens, then this happens, then this happens. So we didn't really have a plot in HLV. I mean, that was something we did very explicitly. We wanted you to be able to path break and kind of go however you wanted to go. But we still felt it was important to understand the story of the world. So even though we didn't have plot, we didn't really focus on character necessarily, we still made sure we understood what are the crystals, what are they being used for, why not something else, what is this robot, what's the Riven, you know. So I mean, even in games that don't have a story, or I guess I should say, even in games that don't have a plot, the story is always important. I don't know if that answers your question. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, actually, the very reason I was asking you this is because of my games. Whenever I will be making, obviously, when I will be in Utah, I'll be making lots of games, and I will be making RPG, as I said, in a couple of weeks. So I wanted to know the optimal path to make a good game, and you guys have a lots of industry experience, and you have worked with big names, and you are very story focused. So I wanted to know, how can I make that experience and put that on into my games? So that's the reason I asked.
I mean, it's really challenging. I mean, I know it's not, it's not a fun answer, but I think there's a reason why we applaud games that do it well. It's because it is really challenging. We have all these assumptions about what stories should be and how they should be structured, and games don't really fit into them. Typically when you're writing, when I write, in my free time, I still write when I can. I follow the three act structure. I'll bullet point every single thing I want to happen in my story. I'll make sure that, I kind of have this philosophy of writer's block is a myth. Writer's block is simply a case of bad planning. So, I'll plan everything. I'll plot everything down. And in games, you can't really do that. Or rather you can, but then you're not really making a game. You're making, I don't know, you're making a movie that you have to be talented enough to view.
Yeah, it's,
right.
and it might be because game, like in the movie, you have the whole control. You know what the player, like the protagonist will do. You know the scene.
Right.
You know what's behind that. What's the story? But in the game, there is a big part is the human interaction. So that might be the reason. And while we are on the point, I actually am as I have said, I read a lot. I love reading
Good.
stories, and I kind of like writing, but I haven't like gone through that as a big passion. But I like writing, and I just do I love making documentaries. I made documentaries for my undergrad, and I'm actually kind of doing it one right now. So one thing I have read on the book is that when Uncharted 4 was going on, they didn't make a big like linear story. They put small stuff like on that, what's that, paper chart or something that puts on the wall or something. They
Mm-hmm.
made those stuff, and just small like kind of like a making a Lego stuff, like small boxes on that. And whenever they wanted to do something, they put, and if they wanted to delete something, they just delete it. So that might be the reason that game did so well. uh, and it did so well because it doesn't have a exactly linear, like rigid kind of stuff, but it was really flexible.
Yeah. I think Naughty Dog games are they fit into that interactive movie category. And I'm not saying that disparagingly. I love Naughty Dog games. Last of Us is one of my favorite games of all time. But I think it's important to recognize you can kind of imagine that you have interactivity. If you kind of like imagine an XY graph, right? You can imagine interactivity, a scale of like 0 to 10, and you can anytime you want to add story, you have to lower this graph, right? If we have maximum 10 is interactivity, that we have got like game right here. This is kind of like game, right? Like this,
Yeah,
oh, it's the perfect game. It's over here, I guess. And then over here it's a book. And anytime you want to tell something, you say, okay, well, we need Nathan to be on this train at this point so that he can do this awesome thing. Just, okay, well, we have to lower interactivity. He has to be there. That's not like, that's got to happen. You're like, okay, well, we're lowering it. And that doesn't make it a worse game. You can still make sure that the experiences that you're trying to tell are still enhanced by the mechanics, but it does make it less interactive. And
yeah,
just being
exactly,
cognizant of that.
exactly. Actually, that's one of the thing I was meaning to ask you, is that whenever we are making a game, and we are giving something to players to interact, because games obviously players will interact in the virtual world, and it's kind of giving the freedom to the player. And whenever I am trying to do something like that on that extent, I'm kind of limiting it. So what do you think is the sweet spot? Like, what's the sweet spot between that, keeping the narrative and keeping the player like interaction just enough so that it doesn't feel unnecessary, like as we have to like discussed about like Horizon Zero Dawn. What's the sweet spot for you?
I think it completely depends. I mean, I've seen games that give me absolute complete control that have been amazing, that have blown my mind, and on the amount of, like, I bring up Pandemic Legacy. That is, the entire story is completely centered around choices I make. So when something bad happens and, you know, a character dies or whatever, that I did that. That's completely on me. And it sticks with me. I'm still tearing up just thinking about it. I'm like, oh, soldier, why? You're too good for us. But on the flip side, I've played games that don't give me any control. Like Last of Us 1, I think we can't affect the story. We have literally no impact. In fact, that final moment, right? If I don't pull the trigger, the game doesn't progress. And I think that's completely fine too. And so it's just, I think, like, when you start your game, before you know what your mechanics are, before you know what your story is, write down what's precious to you. Write down, okay, if we're not going to do anything else, we need to do these 3 things. It needs to be, well, I mean, I can tell you the 3 we had for Hard Life Vector.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fluid
really
traversal. Yeah. I mean, hopefully we hit it, but so we had fluid traversal. Hell yeah. Small but smart. So we didn't want you to feel powerful. We wanted you to feel, and then we wanted it to be, I mean, at risk at showing our colors, it was Metroid. That was the feel we wanted.
Yeah, this walk might be the reason, because of, like, the first person camera movement was making it like something we see with our eyes, and it was huge. And whereas third person might, like, kind of limit that stuff.
It does. It's really, I mean, I had never done any design for camera before that. I don't think anyone had, really. And I think that's what I learned the most, is just, we spent just a week on the camera, I mean, when we made the switch to first person, when that happened, we literally just stuck it in the model's head. Like, we just literally, like, plopped it right here. And for like a week, sometimes when you turn too fast, it would clip and you would lose sight of everything. And we had, so we got rid of the model, and then you couldn't see your feet. And we're like, okay, well, then you miss jumps. So there was, like, all of this learning just to make sure we kept that one pillar of, like, well, it doesn't feel fast, right? We don't feel that grandiose feeling of awe that we love from Metroid, that we love from Shadow of Colossus. And so, like, those 3 pillars, any decision we made, you know, we'd bring it to those pillars. We'd say, like, okay, we're pivoting to first person. Okay, well, does it benefit fluid traversal? Yeah, it does. Absolutely. It makes it actually easier to hit those jumps, makes you feel faster. Okay, sweet. Does it, what was the second one now?
Yeah, the small. The
small, right. Does it make you feel small? That's right. You're like, yeah, absolutely. The world feels way bigger. And then does it feel like Metroid meets Shadow of Colossus? And you're like, yeah, it does. It makes you feel smaller. It makes the world feel more in your face. So any decision, and we had a lot of bad ones that didn't stand up to those 3 pillars, but any of those, you know, we went up against them and said,
like, that's the method you were talking about. Like, you have those pillars, and whenever you are thinking and reading something, and as you have said, it was the writer's block. It's the bad planning, and that might be the reason Hard Light Vector didn't gone into like writer's block, because you already had figured out those main 3 stuff. So whenever you needed an inspiration, you know your goal, the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike was the one that actually brought pillars to the team, and I thank him every day for pillars. I cannot vouch for it more. I think that's paramount. So before you start your story, before you start your mechanic, just 3 things. What are 3 things that you want your game to do? And then when you start writing your story, you know, if you want it to be wholesome and energetic and rainbows, and you're talking about like, okay, and then the dad dies from unicorn attack, and you're like, wait, hang on, does that fit my 3 pillars? And you're like, no, okay, we probably shouldn't do that beat then. We'll switch that. We'll make it something else. Or you bring in a mechanic that is okay, and then you charge up this super attack that does a supernova, and you're like, well, does that feel wholesome and this and this? And you're like, no, maybe we don't need combat in this game. Maybe it's just a relationship sim, or maybe it's a platformer, or like maybe it's like Wander Song, where it's like a little music game. And you're like, okay, well, as long as it fits those 3 pillars, then we're good.
Yeah, and when I was seeing the trailer and the videos, and where that dodging, the boss is attacking, and that dodging effect was amazing, and that made me realize we don't need to like do like big game mechanic, big guns and stuff, and arrows and stuff to make a good game. We can do just that simple like dodging effect and just revert back that Colossus stuff. That was really the essence, and I really like that game also because when I was young, like when I was a kid, I played a game like a tactical OPS. That was the name, and the whole world kind of resembles that, and that was really amazing for me because when I was 8 or 7, I was playing that game. It was kind of like 2004 or 5 type of time, and that really brings back memories and all.
Yeah, my friends have a term for that. We call it nostalgia. It's where it like
nostalgia, like nostalgia's new brother.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, this reminds me of that thing I loved before, but it's not that, right? Like I haven't played Minecraft in like 5 years, and my friend recently got a server, and so I'm getting all this nostalgia because I'm like, oh my god, the Nether's different, and oh my god, the ocean's different, and oh my god, there's villages now. Oh my, what? All these things have changed. So we're calling it nostalgia. So
yeah, that's absolutely true. Like we have gone through lots of stuff we are talking about, and we have like kind of diverted from the questions. Actually, that's what happens when we are both interested in stories.
True.
Yeah. So the next question is like you have worked as a narrative designer in Hogwarts Legacy. I know that's just barely announced, and there's a lot of NDA stuff, but could you share that experience? Like, you don't have to give spoilers, but still.
Oh, hang on one second. Hang on. Oh.
Yeah, absolutely.
My fire alarm's going off in the background.
Like, what happened?
Probably trying to cook sausages. That's typically what does it. That's sensitive.
We in India, we don't have fire alarms, honestly.
Oh, really?
You know, we had our with both apartment. There's only one fire alarm, not for every like tenant.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I tend
to
find
that might be the reason a year back our whole apartment got into a big fire.
Oh no. I definitely feel like personally I'd lean towards the too safe than not safe.
Absolutely.
Enough,
safety first. Because when I was seeing my home burning on a big firing explosion and one cylinder blast in front of my eyes, and that was horrible. God.
Yeah, that sounds like something out of a Naughty Dog game.
Yeah, that's actually because I was in my not even trousers. I was in my half pants and having and it was dreadful, honestly.
So sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but
if it makes you feel better, I just got a message from my wife. She said apparently it was burnt cinnamon rolls. So
I love cinnamon rolls, honestly.
I do too. I wish they weren't burnt.
That's right. So as we are talking about is that could you please explain not explain share your story on Hogwarts Legacy, because you are kind of like one of the oldest people who are working on this.
I mean, yeah, I can be kind of vague. So like I said, oh man, how long ago was that
I
now?
know there's a lots of NDA stuff, I know, and
Yeah.
there's a lots of stuff, but I really want to know.
Yeah, I think I can talk about what I do without any problem. I'm not, like I said, I'm in a content generation role. So typically what I do is I make content. I make missions, or I make gameplay points. Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so my role has changed over the years. I started, I think, like 2.5 years ago, maybe even closer to 3. I don't know, a time in the past. I started as an intern, and I was on the missions team, and then that kind of just progressed. And so now I still do missions. And honestly, right now, a lot of that is polish and bug fixing. So a lot of my day is, we call them must fixes, like it breaks the progression of the game. And so I'll come in and I'll see if I have those. And if so, I'll fix them, or I'll be upset and I'll cuss and scream at my computer for a while because I can't fix them.
That's the time I really need something to hit.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. Yeah. The pandemic doesn't help either. Like, I'm stuck in my house and I'll just like go on walks or go on runs, but so bugs, that's a big part of it. I feel like if you want to be a designer in the industry, you have to have some other skill. No one hires just designer. Well, not very many people hire just designers. Typically, they're looking for a coding background or a writing background or an art background or something else that you can kind of flex into something else. So we're using Unreal, which I love. I can do blueprints. So it lets me
That
help
is
with
the
that.
thing I really hate.
You hate blueprints?
Yeah,
Dude,
I started on blueprints, but it's because honestly Unreal's learning side is not that as good as Unity's. So
that's what
I
Mike
couldn't learn.
says. Yep.
Yeah, so I couldn't understand blueprints, and most importantly, like I'm an engineer, as I've said, and I love coding stuff, and it kind of fulfills my
It
ego,
doesn't
honestly.
feel like coding.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like coding.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I actually
And
feel like,
if you love Blueprint, Unity's got a new visual scripting system called Bolt.
have you used it at all?
Yeah, I have it, and it
What do you
was
think?
much fluid. It was much fluid, and honestly, I'm not going to complain Unreal's Blueprint stuff, because Unreal is made for honestly games like Hogwarts Legacies and all. So
Yeah, there's definitely just different things. Unreal does some things that like blow me away. I mean, even just how they're like natively to the engine, they have a perception system hooked up for AI,
yeah,
which is
that's amazing. I am like,
it's insane.
it's kind of like I'm a 5 years old kid and doing this stuff because it's dream for me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a coding background, but I've made side projects by myself because of blueprints and because Unreal makes it so easy. I mean, I really feel like it's like the golden age of game making right now. Like, it's free. The engine is free. And now you also have like it's like Godot or Godot?
Godot game engine.
Godot,
Yeah, it's really great, and there's a lots of game engines, but I
and
honestly
Game Maker, yeah.
sometimes I think the people who makes PUBG or Fortnite or Hogwarts Legacy, they have the same exact version of Unreal as I have in my computer, and that's not anything different any at all. So the only thing difference is our knowledge. So we don't have any excuse.
Yeah.
We don't have any excuse to make all that case.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bug this week. It was like yesterday. I was trying to figure out, I mean, it's just so stupid, right? Like I just want when you go to a place, I want a thing to happen. And I'm like racking my brain over it. I'm like, how do I get this to work? And I give up and I ping a guy. And I'm like, dude, I can't figure this out. How do I do this? He goes, yeah, there's a function. Just call that function. I think it was like one node, maybe two nodes. And it's just native to Unreal. I'm like, okay, that's a thing that exists. All right.
Like they
Blows
have
me away.
figured everything out. And I'm not going to that question that is the biggest question, kind of makes a rumble, Unity versus Unreal. That's I'm not going there. But still, Unreal.
They both have their merits. They
both have their merits.
Yes.
But
like
Unreal,
Ori and the Blind Forest was Unity, and that game is amazing. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Amazing. Like as I have told that I'm going to make an RPG, and that's going to be a low poly kind of because I don't really have the resource to make very ultra realistic. Oh yeah. So while we are talking, let me show you a video of the game I was making, and you will love it. I can definitely tell you will love it. Where is that? I don't think that's it. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
In the meantime, if you want to check your cinnamon rolls, I won't mind.
I feel like she's like pinging me on Slack. She's giving me frowny faces, so I'm not in too much of a hurry to go look at the burnt cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the game. Because as I said, I am really interested in cinematic storytelling, like in the game. That's what I'm really interested. So, just let me open this video. Okay. This is the stuff. Yeah, share the screen. Yeah, you can see this, right?
Oh, I know this game.
Yeah, I was making exact replica because there's a new game coming, Myth of Wukong, and
Wukong, yeah.
Yeah, Myth of Wukong, and it was 7-8 months before the game's first trailer was released, and I was making this game. So whenever the trailer released, I was like, I was making this game. Who else was making this game? So this is the kind of stuff I was doing, and this is amazing. And this is on Blueprints.
Blueprints is powerful, man.
Blueprints is powerful.
Like, there are things that there are things you need C++ for, but I mean, for the stuff I do, it's only Blueprints.
Yeah, because
so, I mean, I think that's my biggest
stuff, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And also just how the Quest integration with the engine is in Blueprints. So I mean, that's my biggest piece of advice is, if you want to be a designer of any kind, learn a coding language. You don't have to be good at it, but you need to at least know the language, the logic, right? I mean, we use behind the scenes, the writing software we use, the interfaces, same logic as you need to know a bool, you need to know you need to know an int, you need to know a float. Like, these are all things that working with writers is harder when they don't know that terminology. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
It's kind of like, writing, storytelling, coding. At a certain point, you can make all of the stuff by your own if you have enough time and resources, right?
I mean, that's the hard thing, is working by yourself. like, I don't know. I have like 3 side projects that will realistically never see the light of day, because it's, you get to a certain point and you're working on it and you have this vision of what it's supposed to look like and what it's supposed to feel like. And you're one guy. So that animation doesn't feel quite right, or the lighting isn't the effect you're going for, or, oh man, I wish I had an inventory system, right? There's always something
And
that's like
that's the saying. The true art is never finished, only abandoned.
abandoned. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that's the beauty of having a team. I mean, if you're a solo dev, you're more you're more resilient than I am. I mean, I abandon projects more often than I care to admit.
I abandoned lots of projects because, actually not abandoned, but I made like, if I wanted to make like 10, I stopped it on like 3 or 4 max, because
Right.
each and every time I wanted to go further, it take a lot of time, take a lot of knowledge. Even if I
Right.
have the knowledge, I don't have time or resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a totally fair point. I mean, right now I have a side project that I'm working on that I do plan on finishing and going hard on, but it's
And will you like publish it on Steam?
it's actually a tabletop system. So I don't know where I would publish it. I plan on releasing the rule book for free on my website, just for anyone that wants it. I'm not really doing it for money. I'm just doing it because I've played a whole lot of Dungeons and Dragons in my life.
Yeah, I
And
really wanted to. Honestly, I really wanted to play that game. And being a very big fan of Big Bang Theory, and having like
yes,
saw all of those people play that, I wanted to, but I never found any of those.
dude, when you're in Utah, hit me up. I will absolutely play. I
Yeah,
love it.
you gotta teach me first.
Well, so fair warning, if I teach you, I'm going to teach you my system.
Yeah,
It's called
absolutely.
proficiency.
I have to start somewhere.
I like my system, but
Yeah, honestly, like I never had friends before, like going into this game development field. I never had a lot of friends who I can discuss about dragons. Honestly, there's no discussion about dragons with other engineers who are coding in like PHP or Java. And
there will be plenty of people to talk
yeah,
about dragons with, I promise. That
yeah,
was
that
an early discussion for HLV, was dragons. So
yeah. Mike was telling me this, that how can we make a dragon, and instantly it got my attention. Like, oh my
yeah.
god, I am really interested in that kind of stuff. So coming back to our questions, we have lots
Right.
of stuff to talk about. Honestly,
Okay. I'll keep it isolated.
yeah, absolutely. No, we don't have lots of questions left. So like we have talked about Hogwarts Legacy. So the main questions I was really wanted to ask is that you have worked on indie games, lots of indie games, and HLV obviously. You have worked on Hogwarts Legacy, which is one of the biggest AAA games that's currently in development right now. What's the difference you find as a designer in indie versus AAA?
Yeah. So largely, I think this is going to depend on the studio you work at. Like, I know Horizon Zero Dawn was made with a team of 26.
And that
But I would
game
still,
was Senua's Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, was made with 20 people.
yeah, I think might have even been less. I think it was 25 at max with an average of 12,
Yeah,
which is mind blowing because that
exactly.
game is, yeah. So I mean, there's, like Hellblade's kind of like AA, and Horizon is definitely AAA, and but like team size varies, and especially with outsourcing, like you can do a lot with a small team. But if you're working for a team this size, I mean, there's lots of challenges that you don't have in indie games, but there's also some advantages. I think the biggest one is communication. That's the biggest challenge. So I came from HLV, and which was a team of of basically 20. And we were all sitting in a room whenever we worked on the game. And so as I'm play testing, or as I'm making the level, or as I'm whatever, right? If I notice something, I can reach over and tap a guy on the shoulder and go, "Hey, what's that?" Right? Or I can be like, "Oh, hey, Mike, we should do this," or whatever. Like, everyone's there. I can talk to them at any point. I have almost complete knowledge of everything happening in the game. Well, a game this size, while I'm play testing or making something or whatever, basically every day I go, "Oh, that's new. I didn't even know that was in the game." Like, there's always something I didn't know existed, or didn't know was finished, or didn't know we were doing, right? So there's this, I mean, it's kind of exciting. It's like every day's Christmas, because I log in and I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty now," right? "Oh, that was white box. Now it's gorgeous." But on the flip side, it's also, there have been times where a team makes a decision kind of agnostic of the other systems of the game. And that's no one's fault, right? It's not like that's malicious. It's just, it's almost impossible to keep track of this huge, complex creation. And so when that happens, it's always, it has rippling effects. Well, in a game like HLV, that shift to first person, it affected the player team, but didn't really affect the enemy team, didn't really affect the environment team. They kept on trucking. I mean, there were some differences of like, okay, well, now the environment team needs to keep in mind that you're going to be this close to everything in the world. But for the most part, it was an isolated change. Well, in games in this size, nothing is isolated. Everything affects everything. So I feel like that's exciting, but also challenging.
That's really exciting. But somehow, like, we are creatives. Honestly, we are creatives. We love making stuff. So somehow we kind of think that if we know a little bit more on this side, it would be better. Kind of like you are a filmmaker, and if you are part of a big film, you might want to know the whole story. And when, like, I have known and talked with a lots of AAA people, and they all have said it's great to be part of a big motivated team, but if we could know a little bit more about the game, the whole game, or a whole story, that would be really fun.
Yeah. I mean, I like working in AAA. In some cases, it's a dream come true. But I do think my ultimate goal is to go back indie. I mean, I feel like my favorite games, like right now, my game of the year is Hades, and that's Super Giant.
I haven't played this, honestly.
Oh my god, dude! Why are we still talking? No, go play Hades. Just buy it right now. It's amazing.
I got a search that right now.
It is my game of the year. It's astounding. It's a roguelike, which I love. But it's story driven, and it has like relationship sim aspects. It's amazing. I don't even want. I'm not going to tell you anything else, but it's fantastic.
I'm really good. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to do it today, obviously, but I'm going to play this like tomorrow. I have to play this. Whenever I heard a game, I gotta play this because
it's amazing.
I don't really think anything outside that.
Dude, I feel like I could do an entire talk just about what makes Hades brilliant. Like, the game is, yeah, just go play it.
Yeah.
Plus, you like stories, so you're gonna love it.
Yeah. So like Nathan, and honestly, one thing I really, it's kind of like silly, but the reason when we are talking and a lot of time Naughty Dog's name is coming up and Uncharted names is coming up, it's because of your name, because you are the protagonist.
Nathan, yeah. I've definitely been compared to worse protagonists, so I'm very thankful for Naughty Dog for picking Nathan.
Where was the Nathan Wars protagonist? Where other games?
Well, do you know One Tree Hill? It's an old like sitcom. It's not great. The main character of One Tree Hill is Nathan Scott.
Nathan Scott, exactly your name.
Yep.
Wow,
So when I
that's a
first was
good coincidence.
yeah. So when you look up Nathan Scott, you will get the protagonist of One Tree Hill.
I gotta search it. I gotta search it first. Yeah. So, like Nathan, like I was really wondering if you could ask, like if you could tell me something about like you have told that hard light vector and Hogwarts stuff. I really wanted to know what's your dream game, like what the game you want to make. Like if you are the whole in charge, like maybe the head designer or the lead designer, which kind of game you want?
That's a dangerous question. I mean, I feel like at its core, like HLV was not. Well, so I'm gonna start over. There's something wonderful about working in as part of a team that loves each other. I mean, it's such a rare experience. Like I love the team that I'm working on now at Avalanche, but that team's like 5 people out of hundreds, right? When I was working on HLV, we were 20 people of a family. I mean, we really were, I don't know, like we were a community, right? We really felt like we were all fighting for this kind of core vision. And what was particularly beautiful about that is it wasn't anyone's perfect game. No one person in that group made their perfect game. I mean, HLV is certainly not. I don't really like speedrunning games. It's not my style. Mike certainly doesn't like Twitch games, and most of the artists. I mean, we had a few hard surface modelers, but the remainders would prefer more of a stylized route. And what's wonderful about that is that's not like, oh no, everyone's unhappy, but we all got to compromise and we all got to put a piece of ourselves in that game. And so no one's making their perfect game, but everyone's making our perfect game. You know?
Yeah, I get that. Like, I get that feeling.
Yeah, and that's my goal. That's my ultimate dream. Is I don't want to make my perfect game. I want to make our perfect game. And in my head, like that's with Mike. Like Mike is a fantastic designer. If I get the choice, he'll be on my team. And so that means it's probably a roguelike, whether I want it to be or not. And if I'm on the team and I get a say, then it would be story driven.
Exactly. That's the stuff I was expecting. That is the stuff I was expecting.
Right, but it's like there are things I care about and there are things I'd want to see. But I definitely like I want other people's input. Like if my friend Patrick is on that team, like that has certain implications for the art style, certain implications.
Like I have Patrick Benson.
Yeah, Benson Kingsland. Yeah.
Yeah,
Patrick he's the mad scientist behind all of the animations and HLV. So we owe him a lot. But it's just like every person
like
that
on
we add.
Pirate Studios, I guess.
He is, yeah. Yes, he is. He's working on a road company.
Yeah, actually, one of my seniors, Karan Ganesh, also had a podcast, and he was on my show, and I was really fan of his podcast, and I came to know about Patrick from his podcast, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
I love Patrick. He is one of the most sincere, brilliant people I've ever met. So, yeah, but I think that's my like. I have ideas of what I'd like to do, but ultimately I want the team. The team is what's important to me. That being said, I've always loved the idea of what a roguelike narrative game would be. Like I have this idea of you're like maybe it's like have you played Minute?
I'm going to tell I don't play a lot of games. I
You
don't
gotta play
play.
games.
And no, I know I play games, but I spend lots of time like making stuff, and I abandon games like in the middle, like most of the part, like because
Oh sure, dude. I can't know. I don't know the last game I finished. For
like
sure, I feel that.
I don't even know last game I finished. I guess the last game I finished like Uncharted 4. Yeah, Uncharted 4 was the last game.
Oh, I guess yeah. It's probably God of War for me then. But no, yeah.
I don't have PS4, so I had to play Uncharted 4
Oh, okay.
on my friend's console, and I really wanted to play with Kratos, but
Well, the good news is when you get to Utah, you can just plop yourself on the couch and use their PS4.
I actually I will. Actually I will.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've spent many an hour in the lounge. So
I am really looking forward to going to Utah. Like it's kind of like a dream place, like a 2 years long festival for me.
well, I will be interested to hear what you say after rapid prototyping. That class kicks your ass. So it's great. I loved it. Frankly, I'd take it again if they let me. But
It's
it'll.
really extensive, I guess. Like
Oh yeah.
really hard.
Like I mean, it's like, hey, make a game in a week. So
Wow.
it's some of my favorite stuff has come out of that class. But yeah, it's good stuff for sure. I'm
Yeah,
excited
absolutely.
for you.
Yeah. So like thank you, Nathan, for explaining this. And I have asked most of the stuff I wanted to ask, and there are some questions from our audience that like I have like Unity developers group and Unreal developers group, game developers group, and Facebook where I posted, I am going to interview this guy, and if you want to ask something, put it down on the comment, and they have
Sweet.
put 4 questions for you. So let's get for that. All right. The first question is, uh, what are the some qualities are essential you think for a great narrative designer?
Yeah. So I think that the same thing that makes a good narrative designer is what makes a good designer. Period. And it's largely. Um, I wish I had a better term for this, but being able to kill your babies. That's your big thing. You're gonna have ideas that
Wow.
you love. You have this idea and you love it and it's so beautiful and it's perfect and it has your eyes, and then someone's gonna come in and they're gonna go no, and you're like oh okay, and
That's sad. I can
it's
really
sad, but
feel
it's
the
part of
pain.
it.
I can really
Yeah,
feel the pain.
I mean and sometimes it's for the best, right? Like sometimes they're gonna come in, they're gonna say no for these reasons, they're gonna go oh you're right, this baby's actually a monster, it's a terrible baby, get out of here baby, worst that and sometimes you're gonna want to fight back, and sometimes you're gonna say well actually da 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 da, and it's doesn't matter, you have to learn to move forward with direction that you're not necessarily comfortable with, and that you can't stew on it, you can't be upset. I can't count the number of times that content that I've made personally has been cut, and it's not an attack, right? I'm not like upset about it. It's just because of production costs or design changes or pivots, right? Like these things happen. Games are fluid. And so if you can't kill your babies, if you can't move forward with decisions that you're not comfortable with, you can't design. That's it. I think there's this kind of like this idea that design is about having like good ideas, and it's not. Like
Yeah,
it's helpful,
there's a
but
wrong notion like for like newcomers in this industry is that the game design has something to do with art. And I know that's not true.
yeah, I mean, there are certainly aspects of design that can deal with art. Like
Yeah.
if you're a combat designer, if you're handling animation states or frame data, then absolutely that has to do with art. But if you're a narrative designer, you're very unlikely to deal with art I work closely with the concept team quite frequently, but I can't draw. You know, I'll give them a write up. I'll say like, here are my thoughts. Here's kind of the mood that I'm going for.
You are really like the writer who writes the story for the games. You are really that kind of developer.
Well, so we have a story team who really gets like in the nitty gritty of like of the story and the plot. But I help out on the team that handles the like the world, right? Kind of like the spaces. And
Yeah,
so I'll there are times where I'll say like, okay, well, we need this thing here or this thing here, and that's when we'll bring in concept to like kind of flesh out those spaces and make them feel unique. So
great,
that's yeah.
amazing, amazing. Honestly, there's a lots of eye opening for me. Like I can absolutely say, like pulling a all nighter is really helped me today.
Well, I'm
Uh,
sorry that you're pulling an all-nighter.
no,
Sleep is important.
actually, like it's really coincidence. I was normally I would go to bed like 1 a.m. or something like that, but something happened and I started binge watching Silicon Valley, the series.
Nice. Yeah.
And when it was like 3:15 and your text came, and I was like, maybe that's the reason I started watching binge watching, because that something happened. I didn't even expect anyone will text. And
I'm so sorry about that.
no, absolutely not, because I really wanted to talk. This is the thing I love to do, and it's like 9:30 in the morning, and probably after I'm doing this, I'll go back to sleep. But it's absolutely the thing I really love, and it's amazing. The lots of things I have learned today is going to help me at least 20 years for my life, honestly. So
Well, I hope you say that in 2 years after Utah.
yeah, after Utah, I don't know.
You're gonna learn
But
so much, dude. It's great.
yeah, so the second question someone gave me that is that how to get into AAA studios like Warner Brothers.
Oh man, yeah, I was dreading this question. I
Like
mean, it's
give me a designer's perspective, because that's what the most people are interested. Lots of people are interested in game design.
yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, because I don't think that's helpful. It's really, really hard. I mean, getting a job in the industry, it's hyper competitive. There are a lot of people who are passionate, which means they're willing to work for less than what they're worth, right? So not only are you competing with the people that are incredibly competent, you're also competing with people whose passion is blinding them to getting taken advantage of. So it's flooded with all these people. And then on the flip side, just getting your foot in the door, it's like you need experience to get a job. And you're like, well, how do I get experience? You're like, well, you need a job. You're like, but I need experience for a job. So it's really, really challenging. And I mean, at the end of the day, the approach that's going to get you a job is the shotgun approach. Send as many resumes as you can. Make a cover letter, make a template. I mean, I've sent out definitely over 100. Definitely over 100.
Oh my god.
Oh, easily. And Mike sent more than that. Like before Riot, I mean, it's hard. And there are times when you're going to want to give up. And there are times when you're going to want to flip your table and get angry. And you can do that, get angry. But then also
And
calm
lots of
down and
time, I
send out
guess
more resumes.
lots of people doesn't even reply.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. I think out of all of the resumes I've sent out, I mean, other than Avalanche, I think I've gotten 3 interviews. Like, it's really tough. It's really, really tough. And narrative design is even harder. I would say it's next to impossible to get a narrative design position. If narrative design is what you want, and you're like, I'm certain that this is the job I want, apply for a different position, apply for content, apply for gameplay, apply for systems. And if you get that job, talk to your supervisor about what it would take to transition into that other role.
So the first
That's
get my foot into the door and then transition it, or having the experience and do that in future.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I honestly I was lucked out because Avalanche is in the back door of EAE, right? It's in Utah, and so they reached out to our program, and so I got my internship basically through EAE, kind of like unofficially through EAE, and that got my foot in the door, and that without that, I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's so hard.
Yeah, and the reason I was smiling when you told that just take the shotgun approach is that like a year or a year and a half when I wasn't even that much ready, because I have a better portfolio now rather than I had back then.
Sure.
I applied to Ubisoft. I didn't even thought. I had a gameplay programmer position open, and I know that they're going to reject. I absolutely certain about it. But okay, let's just do that. Let's see what happens. And the great thing that happened is that the recruiter team sent the feedback along with the rejection that actually
That's
helped make
awesome.
my portfolio much better. And
Dude,
another thing that happened.
That's amazing.
And another thing that happened is that it really like take away all my fears. Like I know the rejection will happen, and most of the time other people just don't like apply, and I don't have that right now. I know even if I get rejected, I will apply it, obviously.
Yeah, worst case scenario, you get rejected and you're back where you started.
Yeah, well, what I have to lose? That's the kind of mentality like grew up, and that might be the reason like this interview is happening, because I just put the text for you on LinkedIn and you replied. And honestly, let me tell you, lots of people doesn't. If like I have approached like 50 people, and today you are the seventh one, so that kind of people doesn't reply. They just see it, they don't reply.
7 out of 50 is not bad, man. It could
No,
be a lot worse.
it could be a lot worse. 7 out of 50 is lot better, lot better. Like I even like after each and every episode, I need to think like, okay, what will be the next episode? Who I'm going to approach the next episode, and even if they are going to willing to come or not, honestly. But today is the day that happens. I have to cancel one interview. I had to cancel one interview for today, and I'm going to do it for tomorrow. There's another guy named Ajay Satish from EAE, and he's a gameplay programmer from BioWare, and uh, and the time kind of overlapped, and I said sorry, I couldn't do that. I will do it tomorrow, and that's the reason.
Dude, I'm so sorry.
No. It's not about sorry. It's like I am really committed into doing this podcast. I'm really committed.
Well, good. I can tell. I'm impressed.
Yeah. So, the there are two questions left. Is that what's a native designer's portfolio should look like?
This is tricky. I mean, you're going to need writing samples. Every position you apply for is going to ask for writing samples. Typically 3. Don't give them complete works. Like I would say, well, hopefully they'll tell you. Like some jobs that I've applied to will say like, don't exceed 20 pages or something like that. Just keep in mind that like people are going to have to read this. So if you give them, you're like, here's my completed 200-page novel. Like they're not gonna read that, right? So writing excerpts that show off your best voice in as large of a range as you can. So if you have 7 fantasy things and 2 science fiction things, include the science fiction things because, you know, that it shows variation. So you definitely want writing samples. if you have examples of your writing like in context, show video. That's not always possible. Like I can't do that, obviously. But if you can, that's great. That's a plus. And then I would also just include any side projects you're working on or anything like that. I will say, like, kind of tangential to that, whether or not something requires a cover letter, write a cover letter. I mean, if you don't write a cover letter, I really doubt they're going to even look at your application.
Yeah, I'm definitely, and this is the exact advice I got from a lots of people, and they said exactly the same thing. Like, cover letter is like the very essential thing in the recruitment.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, actually, I want to add one more thing to that. I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite here because I don't do this, but I have heard that if your writing samples are scripts, that's better because games tend to have more of a parallel to film than prose. So if you can do scripts, that's generally recommended. And then also, if you have examples of like branching narrative, like Twine games, include that as well.
I will absolutely do that. Like, I will absolutely, obviously, like, I don't have a lots of narrative design experience, but lots of friends of mine who are interested in going as a designer, and there are lots of people in the Facebook community who interested in narrative design. I would absolutely tell them to do this because I really want people to get their dream job. Honestly, that's the thing I can give them back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like, I am really wondering is that if your film background, like the short films you have made or like the documentaries you have made, helped you in getting a position in WB.
It didn't hurt. I'm not sure. I know in my interview they said that they read my excerpts and they liked my darker style. So I know that helped. But really, I mean, I think the thing they said that helped the most in the interview was I had as part of that game club, we made a short little game in Unreal. And they said that was what impressed them the most is that I did that. So I don't know how much the movies helped. It's definitely helped in communicating with like art. It's helped in the job. I don't know if it helped getting the job.
All right. So it's kind of like everything, everything sorts out, like your past, all those creative arts background, film background, and design background, all those came together and help you becoming what you are today.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I mean, yeah, I still just think that like the great thing about design is you can pull from anything. I mean, the first Legend of Zelda was created because he loved the feeling of exploring in the woods. So he's like, I want to make a game that feels like that. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you can pull from anything.
same thing happened that what was the underwater game, that Subnautica or something.
Subnautica, yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same thing happened with the creator. So the final question is that any advice to beginner who wants to be a narrative designer or in general game designer in future? Any advice?
Make games. Make crappy games. I mean, it's like Unreal's free, dude. Unity's free. Like this is a fantastic time to get into game design. Take advantage of it.
Which game engine you have started with?
I started with Unreal. Yeah.
You started with Unreal?
I did.
That's the reason we are talking there. I have also started with Unreal.
Yeah, I mean, that was... I think Unity's actually probably slightly more beginner friendly. But yeah, I mean the game club that I started in, they were using Unreal, and that's I
And
don't know. I like
I
Unreal a
know,
lot. I think it rocks.
yeah, I know one of the reason I started Unreal is because of its visuals. Like we are storytellers,
Yeah.
and I really wanted to have that visuals because I honestly, with all the merits Unity have, that visual didn't have the Unity didn't have that visuals, and I really wanted to have that in my game. So that's the reason I started with Unreal, and I'm damn sure that was one of the reasons for you too.
It didn't hurt. I mean, there's definitely that was why we picked Unreal for Hard Light Vector. Was we had 4 artists that were saying they were basically saying, no, I want it to look this way. We're like, all right, it's fine.
Yeah,
So,
we have the capability.
so I mean, that's my advice is if you want to be a designer, make games and play games, consume media, become a library of design terms, watch GDC talks,
Oh my
subscribe to
god,
Mark Brown.
I've spent lots of hours doing like listening GDC talks. There's a I was listening one yesterday. 30 things I hate about your pitch, game
Yes, yeah,
pitch.
it's a good one. It's a really good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really like that's really great.
You have the video game industry is wonderful. I worked very briefly in the live events industry, and it doesn't have that feeling of community. I mean, when I've gone to GDC twice, yeah, twice, and it is filled with people that want to help you. Seriously, it's like everyone I've ever talked to, I had a question, they're like, "Oh yes, let me help you." You know, like I don't know. I think I'm just so glad
When
that our
I got
community
when
is.
I'm going to USA next year, I gotta go to GDC and Comic Con. Those two are the stuff I have to go.
I hope things are open by then. I really do.
Yeah, yeah, and this year's GDC, lots of people have missed this great opportunity to come together. And the online
Yeah.
GDC was didn't have that vibe. I was there for online GDC and Unreal Fest and all the stuff. And there's a fest coming on like White Knights Conference or something on the Europe's, yeah.
Hmm.
But it doesn't have that vibe. What have that on like the GDC? I was in San Diego, I guess.
Yeah, San Fran. Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco, San Diego, I guess. So